And thank you for attending our Enterprise PDM Quick Start Overview. This is John Pasenik, and I'm going to be presenting with Kevin Holbrook today. And we're going to go through this new program that we've been working on the development of for the last month or so. And we certainly would like to get any questions that you would like to ask. So please feel free to use the questions box within GoToWebinar to pose any questions to us, and we will do our best to respond to them during the presentation, or if need be, we'll get back to you after we're done. So what I want to go through here is just a very brief PowerPoint to kind of lay out what today's agenda is going to be. And essentially what we're talking about is a quick start implementation of Enterprise PDM, where we have taken the most requested functionality within the software and come up with two different predefined vault configurations that we can implement very quickly for customers. And we're going to go through the differences between those, talk about some of the typical issues that our non-PDM customers face, look at various areas that you might not have thought of places where your profitability is being impacted by some of the issues that are presented by not having a data management application. Then we'll look at the pricing relative to the quick start implementations, a very simple break-even analysis, and then we'll go to the demonstration and open it up to questions. So first off, what is an Enterprise PDM Quick Start? The number one criteria was something that could be implemented very rapidly. And so by predefining a lot of the settings, we're able to accomplish that. The second thing is that we want it to be very easy to learn and easy to use. The third thing is that it needs to be able to manage both CAD data and non-CAD data. Some of our customers that use Workgroup PDM are able to manage their CAD data, but find that it's not necessarily the ideal solution for managing non-CAD data. And I think you'll see that Enterprise PDM is really very good at managing both. The other thing that we're going to be looking at is both version and revision control. The basic difference between the two is revision control needs to go through an approval process, whereas version control is just a copy that you have decided to check into the vault. One of the other big issues that a lot of our non-PDM customers encounter is file duplication, and that's another thing that we're going to look at, of how to eliminate having files of the same name stored in your system. We're also going to be looking at the workflow processes within Enterprise PDM. And the primary differentiator between the Level 1 and Level 2 Quick Start, as we're calling them, is the Level 1 Quick Start includes self-paced training, whereas the Level 2 implementation is going to be a combination of self-paced training and instructor-led classroom training. And then last and certainly not least is both the Level 1 and Level 2 Quick Starts are going to be scalable, so that you could take it from a very small, simple implementation to a much more sophisticated implementation. So again, looking at the differences between the two, in both cases, CAD Dimensions will send staff to your location to install the software, which involves SQL Server, Database Server, and Archive Server. We will then configure your user accounts and the permissions relative to those user accounts. And then in the case of the Level 1 implementation, we'll provide you with a self-paced video training application for teaching your users how to use the software, and then also we'll provide you with an administration guide which goes into great depth relative to all the settings that a user can control within the configuration of Enterprise PDM. In the Level 2 implementation, we will do all those same tasks, but we will also include instructor-led training for both the administrators and end users. So there are a couple feature differences between the two. Within the level 1 implementation, we'll be addressing version and revision control. We'll go through the Windows Explorer and SolidWorks integration and customize those. We'll provide you with a workflow for releasing of CAD documents, and we'll educate you on the searching tools for doing things like where used, and contains, and pending approval. And you'll be able to control access to your files based on either group, user, location, process state. Level 2 is going to include all that, but we're going to provide additional data cards, a more enhanced workflow, and also give you the option of using the internal PDM messaging or email messaging for notifying users of actions that they need to take. We'll also be implementing the full text searching indexing so that you can search for contents within files, and again, as I mentioned earlier, instructor-led training. So some of the typical issues that our customers face, and really the number one issue, is challenges with version and revision control. Not really having an easy time of being able to keep multiple versions without having to go through a lot of manual effort. The other is a lack of repeatable processes, that when a file needs to be released for manufacturing, not having a consistent process that those files flow through. Another one, and a very significant one as well, is file duplication. We've had customers that have had literally hundreds of copies of the same file on their server because the user has copied projects numerous times and ended up with a lot of duplication, which then when you go to release files, it becomes a real challenge to try and filter out the different flavors of those files. Certainly overwriting is another very common issue. Using other disconnected processes for sharing data like FTP servers and email attachments, again, it becomes very hard to control your data. Another big factor, which is kind of a hidden cost, is the time that it takes to get files from your file server. Enterprise PDM can really speed that up. Another would be building and shipping correct products, recreation of data, missing deadlines, and just the time spent searching for data. You know, talking a little bit more about searching for data, it's something that I think a lot of people don't really think about the costs associated with it, but if you look at the example here, it's pretty significant, the cost that's associated with searching for data. Another one would be the recreation of data. It's not that unusual that customers will get filed in a folder and that folder will get renamed and people forget who renamed it and where it is and you can't find it, so what's the alternative? Recreating it. Looking at the pricing of Enterprise PDM, what we really tried to do was to drive down the cost and the amount of time required for the on-site implementation by predefining a lot of the settings. A typical implementation prior to the quick start would have been about 5 days, and we've been able to get that down really to a much smaller amount of time. From a break-even analysis standpoint, we're basically talking about needing to save you a little over an hour per person per week to make this pay for itself. And when you see the demonstration and the features that the software provides to you, I think you'll see that it's very easy to achieve that goal. So what Enterprise PDM includes is really a complete package where there's nothing else that you have to go out and buy. It has CAD integrations for SolidWorks, for AutoCAD, for Inventor, and a number of other popular CAD applications. It also includes eDrawings Professional, so every user has the ability to view CAD files, to be able to measure files, to be able to mark up files. It has full bill of materials management capabilities. For customers that do have multiple sites, you can replicate data between sites so that you can have local stores of data files that are always up to date in your locations. As I mentioned earlier, it includes workflow functionality where you can define a flow chart of how your files flow through the system, and there's no limitations to that. It's fully capable to address even the most complex workflows. The software is supported on Windows XP, Vista, and Windows 7 in both 32-bit and 64-bit environments. It includes Microsoft SQL Server, so there's a very robust database server behind the scenes managing all of the non-graphical data. And all of the licenses are floating and concurrent worldwide. So if you do have locations spread throughout the world, you can share these licenses to all of those locations. So with that, I want to thank you, and I'm going to turn the reins over to Kevin, and he's going to go through a presentation of Enterprise PDM.
Thanks, folks. Thanks, John. Now what I want to do today is just to give you an idea of what you would be seeing on your end if you were to go with one of our quick start programs. The nice thing about having a pre-configured vault as part of the purchase is you can see exactly what your vault is going to look like minus the users and groups right out of the gate. So here we are in Windows Explorer. I have my Explorer window open, and if you look off to the left, what we typically would call the folder view, you can see that under my C drive I have these blue icons which we call the blueberries. Now in my main view you can also see that I have 3 of those icons. Those are your access points into the Enterprise PDM, and what we're going to demo today is the level 2 quick start, which has a little bit more advanced functionality in the workflows, has some different data card structures to it. Once you click on the blueberry, you now enter the server side of the vaults. Now, when I say vault, what I'm talking about is a secure location where anytime you drag and drop, save as, copy or paste your data into this environment, the data is going to be captured by Enterprise PDM and be managed by Enterprise PDM, and you're going to see more of that as I get going here. Now let's take a little tour around the interface inside of Windows Explorer. First, I want you to be aware that this is truly Windows Explorer. It's not an application that looks like Explorer. Okay, I'm using Windows 7 64-bit today. Now Enterprise PDM is going to be integrated in that environment by the use of pull-down menus. You can see I have 4 different menus built off to the top portion of my file list. We call this top section our file list. Off to the right-hand side, I have some of my search capabilities, again, in pull-down menus. Now, at the bottom, we have 6 tabs that are specific to Enterprise PDM, and I'm going to go through each of those tabs as I demo today. Now, the rest of the commands and interaction that we'll have with Enterprise PDM will typically be done through right-click menus. If I right-click on the white space and not on a folder, I have commands, some of which could be Enterprise PDM related. If I right-click on a folder, you can see I even get more specific to Enterprise PDM with commands like check in, check out. If I go all the way down to a file, the file format, again, I have a list of commands that are specific to Enterprise PDM. Now, within that environment, I just want to take you through a little bit of those tabs. I'm at the CAD data now. I have the ability to retrieve what we call the data card. The data card is a tab at the bottom of the interface that provides me with information about my selection. Now right now you're seeing the data card you'll get with your level 2 vault as it relates to SolidWorks part files, but you may have a slightly different card for SolidWorks assemblies and SolidWorks drawings. That being said, there's also a preview tab in here. The preview tab will run eDrawings Professional and allow you to view your SolidWorks parts, assemblies, drawings, and your DXF and DWG formats. Now let's take a step back for a moment before we get into the full environment here, because we're really in Windows. So you're going to have the ability, if you wanted to create a new project, to just come in here and create a project folder. I'm going to call this, we'll name it Holmatro for my Holmatro spreader. Now under that I can create subfolders. Now creating these folders duplicates this information on the server. So if I wanted all my CAD data to be in one folder, I can create a CAD data folder. If If I wanted to create a folder for documentation, I can do so. So because we're dealing in Explorer, you're going to be very familiar with how to navigate and how to create different entities within the vault. Now, how do I get files into the vault? Now, here I have a folder with all sorts of different file formats. Anything from Excel to Word docs, PDFs, there's some images in here. As I stated before, anytime you copy and paste, drag, drop, or save as into the vault, it will be captured by the system. So I'm just going to drag these 46 files directly into my documentation folder for my new project I just created. Now, what the software is going to do initially is it's going to look inside of each file and try to retrieve the information that it's looking for in my file list. Now, the file list is set up to automatically look for description, revision, part number, material, and if I go to the back end here, part type. So it's going to look within the file. Now, what you need to think of there is custom properties. Are you already filling out description? Are you already filling out part number? Now, the files that come in are also viewable by the preview window. If I select my PDF, I'm going to get a preview of the PDF file. Now, the viewer that you're seeing is out of the box Enterprise PDM. It will view over 250 different file types and multiple versions thereof. So if I put in PNG files, I can view them directly in Windows Explorer. If I put in JPEGs, I can view those directly in Explorer, along with my standard SolidWorks formats. As I said before, eDrawings will also view your DXF or DWG formats. All your Word and Office products, here's an Excel file, here's a Word doc, are viewable within that preview window. The other thing I want to point out is part of the level 2, we do have various data cards for the different file formats. So for my Word doc, I do have a different data card than I do for maybe my DWG, because I may be storing different information about those particular files. Now, Enterprise deals with what we call smart files, files that understand they're possibly related to each other. If I take this Word doc here and I try to check it in, that's the process of taking it from my system and placing it sending it out to the server is the process of checking in. When I do that, notice it sees that the Excel file is related to the Word document. Now, all that really is the Excel file is embedded in there, but Enterprise PDM has the ability to recognize that. Now, there are situations within your organization where you want to create these types of relationships, like a SolidWorks drawing in part might have. Here's an example. We have CNC data from whatever CNC programming software that you have. I'm going to go ahead and copy this, and I want to paste it to the DWG. I'm going to paste it as a reference or a relationship so that the CNC file is now related to that DWG. If I check in the DWG, I'm required to place a comment in here. Added DWG CNC data. By adding the comment, that goes to the history of the file when I look at what's happened to the file previously. But once I've done that, if I go to the Contains tab as part of my special tabs for Enterprise PDM, I can now see that the DWG file contains as a child of it the CNC file. Now, what's that really say for your organization? That allows the other individuals who are in the data to understand how they relate together. If somebody sees that CNC file, they might come in and say, you know what, where's that CNC file used? Using the Where Used tab. Oh, there's a DWG. So if I update the CNC file, do I have to update the DWG or vice versa? It creates those types of relationships. Now, if I want to put all of these files in the vault in one shot, I'm going to go ahead and check them in one file swoop. Control A, check in. Now look at the relationship that SolidWorks is able to pick up here. It recognizes that this part and this drawing go together. Here's a DWG with external references. It's able to put that together and understand those relationships. There's my Excel file and Word document. Okay, there's another SolidWorks drawing with multiple parts related to it. There's even a zip file in here. Weldments, it understands weldment cut lists. Now I also want to notice that there's a section here that shows the files not found. Enterprise PDM is going to help you to clean up the data that you have today. Those files that are sitting out on the server where you have duplicate data or you open up the assembly and the file's not found, Enterprise is going to flag you when you go to first place those into the vault to let you know that this file is not found. You can then go retrieve it, bring it in the vault, and check in the data. Okay. Now I need to create a Word document from scratch. And I'm going to do that under my new project here. We'll go Home Outro, and I'll create a new subfolder for Word. Now in Windows you have the ability to create documents on the fly using what they call Word templates. I'm going to go ahead and create a Word document. That Word document, to open something from inside Enterprise PDM, I just double click on it. Okay, we go ahead and make the changes to the Word document right here in the window. Now I don't have to do anything special because I'm working in Enterprise PDM. I just hit save, close the Word document, and then I check it in. Now checking in the file is the process of taking it locally in my machine and sending it out to the server. Now if I'm going to continue to work on this Word document, there's an option to keep it checked out. But here's where I want to point out to you that what John was talking about with version control. Now that I'm checking in a new version, it's creating version 2 of 2 when I check it in. So I'm going to go ahead and put a comment in here that I added text, and I'm going to go ahead and check it in. Now because it's still checked out to me, I'm logged in as the engineer, I can now go to the data card, and maybe I wanted to add a subject here. And my title, maybe I want to put a title in here for that particular document. If there's a part number, a document number, I can grab the document number at this point. Okay, that data gets stored along with the Word document, but I still have access to go ahead and change the Word document. So I'm going to add more text. So we'll add another line in here to show the differences. And we'll go ahead and check that version in. Now let's say I'm done at this point, so I'm not going to keep it checked out. Added more text and filled out data card. Now once that file's in, we've created version 3 of that file. Now how do I know that? If I select the Word document, there's another tab specific to Enterprise PDM that shows you how many versions of the file exist. You can see version 3 exists of that file. If I go to my preview window, I'm able to see version 3, which is add text, add more text. If I go to the data card, you can see that my typed in values still exist on the data card. Now these typed in values are searchable if I wanted to search on this information. But one of the things that we're able to do when we're dealing with version control is I have the ability to get older versions. So I can perform a get version, and I could go back to my original version of the Word document. The software is going to go ahead and retrieve that. Now a couple of things I want to point out. The software is going to tell me clearly that what I'm viewing locally is version 2 out of 3. There's 3 versions in the vault. If I go to the preview tab, you can see that I'm viewing the one that has just the add text. And if I go to the data card tab, you can see that none of the fields that I filled out at that version are showing. So this is the whole idea about version and revision control. Now I haven't made a revision to this because I haven't taken it through any process. We're going to do that with the CAD data here in a moment. Let's go into the CAD world. We're going to go into SolidWorks for a second. Inside of SolidWorks, you're going to have an add-in for Enterprise PDM. That add-in shows up in the task pane. Now, a lot of the functionality that you see me performing in Windows Explorer can also be done inside of the Enterprise PDM client. Now, John mentioned that out of the box you get several CAD integrations. Some of them have their own add-in that can perform check-in, check-out, change state, getting access to the data card, searching, performing a lot of the functions that you would use inside that Explorer window that I just showed you. Now what we want to do here is we want to create a new document. So we're going to start a new document. Now one of the things that the software allows me to do is when I start a new document, I'm able to fill out things like part number, revision, and get access to the data card. So let me start with some real quick geometry. I'll create a simple block here, and we'll go tell the software we want to ready to check that particular item in. Now, it's never been placed into the vault, so I can't perform a check-in action through my right-click. What are we typically used to doing inside of SolidWorks already? We're going to do a save. And when we do that save, what we're going to do is go to our C drive. We're going to find our vault, which is our Blueberry, and we're going to go to the project that I want to store this in. We're going to store this in my Homatro, in my CAD data, and we'll call this my demo part. Demo 1. Okay, once I save that, I'm then ready to continue to work on this particular file. It's still checked out by me. I've created version 1 of this particular file. I can continue to work. So let's say version 2, we'll make this a little bit thicker here. Now notice I'm not going to save in this case. I'm going to make it thicker and I'm going to perform my check-in action. Now I want to keep working on this, so I'm going to keep it checked out. Made block thicker. Okay. And perform the action. You'll notice that again the version number bumps up because I've created the second version of this particular file. Now at this point, let's do something a little more drastic. Let's turn this into a sheet metal file. I want to go ahead and insert my bends and rip the corners. So I have something a little bit more drastic at this point. Okay. Now before I go ahead and placing this into the vault, I want to create a drawing of it. So let's go ahead and make a drawing from this particular part. Now all the actions that you're seeing me doing are the same as what you're doing today. We're grabbing views from inside of SolidWorks. We're designing the same way you traditionally would. Okay. And this is the login to my other vault. I really don't need to do that here. We're going to go ahead and also supply an isometric view for this. Maybe add some dimensions. Plop one on both ends here. Give an overall. And maybe a width of this one here. Okay, and last thing we want to do is maybe put a section view. Maybe a detail of the cutaway here, and we'll pop that at the top. Now again, in SolidWorks this has not been saved yet, so I just perform my save. Okay, it's asking me if I want to save the other, that's fine. And I save it right into the vault once again in my Save As dialog, right to the Blueberry, right to the folder that I want to store that particular file in. Now that I've created a relationship or files that are related together, when I go to check those inside Enterprise PDM now, it asks me also, do I want to check in the original part file as well? Okay, in this case, I want the part to go in right along with it. It's creating version 2 of the drawing and version 3 of the part. And we'll say create a drawing. and turned to sheet metal. Now here's the neat thing. I've just checked those in, and now I've relinquished ownership of those files. I didn't check the box for keep checked out. By relinquishing ownership, now anybody else in the organization with proper privileges will be able to check out those files as well. Now, from my perspective, I also, with privileges, have the ability to go back and look at older versions. For instance, if I do a get version on the original file, I want to see what the original one looked like. Say OK to this, and it's going to go ahead and retrieve. Now notice the dimensions are all off because we never created a drawing for this particular model. But if I open it up, you can see here's what I started with. Now let's equate that to what you're doing in Windows today. In Windows today, when you save, you overwrite the older version. It no longer exists. It's no longer retrievable. In Enterprise PDM, you have access to the older versions of the file. Now, if there's an issue, it's going to let you know. Okay, this is letting me know that the drawing was never created using this particular file. But it's also letting me know I'm viewing an older version of this part. All I have to do is say get the latest version. And it will go ahead and retrieve the latest version, and we'll be able to view our drawing at this point. Okay. View our drawing here with the updated information. And this should be my flat. Let's see here. That's because I folded it back up. But you're able to go back to the original here. Now, nothing's changed here. Okay, nothing's changed in the document. If I go back to my Explorer window, I can go ahead and close these right now. We're done working with that. If I go back to Explorer for a moment, I go to my CAD data, and I look at my drawing. Okay, the drawing is intact. The drawing is exactly the way I left it inside the CAD tool when I checked it in. Now I need to follow the process of getting this released to a revision, because right now this is at version 2. I need it at Rev A. Okay, there's a couple ways I can do that. I could do it from within the CAD tool. I'm going to show you how to do it from in Explorer. In Explorer, on the right click, we have the ability to change state. Now let me do a quick explanation of what this means. This is the workflow for Enterprise PDM for CAD data. This is what you'll get in your Level 2 Quick Start. Everything starts as a CAD file in work in process. From there it gets submitted for approval, and then once approval is accepted, it gets released. Okay, that's the process we're following today. Now what we can do is we control permissions based upon the status of the file. So if it's a work in process, do I want the viewer group to even see it? If it's pending approval, who can see it? If it's released, well, maybe viewers finally get permission to see it. We control those permissions, and this is part of the implementation. We're actually going to sit down with you and discuss what level of permissions these groups need to have. Okay, and they'll be customized to your business. Okay, now how do we make this work within the Enterprise tool? Well, I perform a change state. If I have permissions to do so, I can come in here and submit for approval. Upon submitting for approval, I can provide a comment to the approver. Please take a look. Once I accept it, you'll notice in my file list the files now are pending approval. Now what I can't do any longer is check out those files because somebody's looking at them to approve those particular files. Well, in this particular case, and again, this is based upon how we set up permissions, which could be unique to your organization, and this is something we customize with the Level 2. You may have a manager come in there and approve documents. So I'm going to log in as a manager. Okay. Now when the manager logs in, he's got a lot of information to kind of sort through here. You know, we only have a couple projects, but chances are you're going to have quite a bit of data here eventually. So he may not know exactly where to go to find the files that are waiting for his approval. Now that's where the search comes into play. Off to the right-hand side of the interface is a little pull-down menu that allows us access to our search cards and our favorites. Now what's a search card? Let me open up one here. A search card is like a data card, but it presents you with fields in which you can search the data card information. For instance, this is a field for whatever I type in here, it will search on the document number field on the data cards that we provide. Okay. Now we also have the ability to use search favorites. It's like a favorite web address. If you're a manager doing pending approval, well, I can come in here and every day grab my search favorite, and it will provide me with a search showing me any files that are pending my approval. And again, this manager has just saved it as a favorite in this case. Now, what can the manager do on his end? Now, John mentioned that out of the box, every seat of Enterprise comes with a seat of eDrawings Professional. eDrawings Professional allows you to do markup and measure of an original CAD data. So if I wanted to as a manager, I could open this up in my eDrawings Pro. I could mark it up and then notify the original designer that he needs to change the particular file. Now, if no markups are required, then all I have to do as a releaser of the document is to change the state to release documents. Now, before I do that, I want to show you a little bit in the preview of this drawing, because the template, and we're going to provide some templates with the level 2 quick start. The template is set up to pull in information. Notice it automatically has the name and date in which the file was drawn. This was drawn by me, the engineer. But also the checker and the approver information will automatically be pulled in as those actions happen within the vault. Now over here, my drawing number, which is a field on the data card, is automatically populated. You'll notice there is no rev. So as I go and approve this and release the document, okay, I can put again a comment here. Looks good, and go ahead and release it. Now what this does is it's now released it within the system. But if we look at our eDrawings preview, it's actually assigned the revision number. It's assigned the approver, which happens to be manager in this case. So the history of this file is accessible now. Let me get rid of my search for a second here. The history of this file is accessible. Okay, if I take a look under my tools, I have the ability to get the history. Display history of everything that's happened to that particular file since I've placed it in the vault, from the time it was created by the engineer to the time that the manager checked it in and said it looks good and the revision is assigned. Now watch what happens now when I tell the software I want to do a get version. Can you clearly see the difference between a revision and a version of the file? These are what we call working copies. They're the day-to-day changes. So in a level 2 quick start vault, you're going to have the ability to do your day-to-day changes and revision a file and lock it down. It's all automated and set within the workflow process. Now we showed you a little bit about searching, but I want to take you back into the search for a moment. There's 2 other search cards that are in there. One for my complete search, which literally allows you to search on anything and everything that file has done since it's entered the vault. From who's checked it out, to the dates and times, to the workflow states that we're in. And as John talked about, we're also going to initiate the indexing portion of the search. Now, what indexing allows you to do is search within the file. So if it's a Word document, you want to know how many Word documents you have in the vault that reference your company's name. You can search on that, and it will actually search the content of the Word documents themselves. Okay. Now, what I want to do here is I just want to do a quick search on the vault. I'm going to search the entire vault, and I want to look in the description for yoke. Now, by doing that, I'm presented with 3 files. Now, what I want to illustrate here is some of the technology that we can use under the contains and where used. If I select the drawing and say, what does that drawing contain? It shows me that that particular drawing contains the 201-830 part. But here's the level of granularity you get there. What this is telling me is that version of the file, which is Rev A, okay, is using this version of this part. So version 3, Rev A, is using version 2 of the part, and it even tells me which configuration is also being used. I can go back and say, you know what did version 2 of this drawing use? Version 2 of this drawing was created using version 1 of the part. So think about that history you lose when you save over a file in Windows. Or think about any of you who have product that you sell to a customer, and 5 years from now, they come to you and say, hey, I need to reorder such and such a part. How do you know which part that you sent them? Well, here, if you know what version you sent them or what revision, the software is going to say and keep track of which files were sent to those individuals, because now you have access to that old data. Okay? Now, last little piece we want to discuss before we open up for questions. In my projects, I have an entire miter saw. And that miter saw contains several subassemblies, several parts, and we need to deal with some of the bill of material data related to that. I've taken you through most of the tabs, but there's a tab down here for bill of materials. Now, if I select one of the drawings, okay, I'm presented with a full tree structure as to parts that are related to that particular drawing. And again, this is version specific. If I pick an older version, it will show you what version of those parts were referenced in it. Now, part of that bill of materials tab that we have here is very similar to the contains in that it shows you a tree structure, but we're able to provide it with what is equivalent to a bill of material you would get on a SolidWorks drawing. It's retrieving the information from each of the individual files to present you with a bill of materials. Now, what can I do with that bill of materials? Well, I have the ability to export this data out as another format like a CSV file and be used elsewhere. Now, up to the top here, I have also the ability to retrieve the bill of materials directly off the SolidWorks drawing. Now, most of you today are probably spending a lot of time making sure there's some level of accuracy to the bill of material off the SolidWorks drawing. Now, let me explain the differences here. The one that you're seeing off to the left is what we call the computed BOM. This is based upon all the relationships that you're seeing inside of Enterprise PDM. When I select the SolidWorks BOM, it's showing me only the BOM data that exists inside of the drawing that you created. So this is the table information. Now, what can I do with that? Because you can see we can only do so much in SolidWorks as far as filling out this information. What if I wanted to add paint or tape or other types of items, or even modify something that exists here? You might have a bill of material that's a purchasing BOM, or you have to change quantities. Okay, here we can do what we call a save as BOM. I'm going to save this as a BOM. We'll call this purchasing. We'll call it PURCH, and I'm going to save that out. Now, what that does is it saved it with a format SWBOM. Now, in order to see those, I tell the software I want to show the BOM, and I'm actually going to check in this particular BOM. So I'm going to capture as it exists right now. Now, once I do that, I then have the ability to modify what exists here. So if I want to insert items, I can insert a row, and maybe I wanted to add some tape. So we'll add some tape in here. If we knew the weight of the tape, we're going to leave that NA in this case, and we need 1 roll of tape. Now maybe I wanted to change what's being shown in one of these others. Maybe I didn't want to call this the lever bracket. I want to call this the lever material that we're purchasing. And I could go ahead and delete items as well. Hide this row, maybe hide this row here. So I've modified what I have. Okay, I can go ahead from here and just save it. Now, what I can do, and what's really critical about these BOMs, whether I create a named BOM or whether I'm using one off the drawing, is the ability to compare. So I'm going to just check this in and create the new version. And we have the ability to go in, now that I've created 2 of them, and say, you know what? Take the bill of materials that I have and compare it to the original one that I created. Now you can see this little legend at the bottom here. Anything that's been added is in green, anything that's different is in orange, and deleted is in pink. And you can see the changes that I've made show up using the compare BOM. Where this will help you folks is if you have multiple releases of a drawing, you're able to compare the differences in bill of materials down to the slightest textual change and see accurately how things have progressed through a particular design. Now, one other thing I wanted to illustrate here before we close, if we go back to my projects, one of the other things that has always become an issue when dealing with SolidWorks files outside of a PDM environment is renaming those particular files. So let's go to something here. Let's take this bearing pedestal. We'll say, where is this bearing pedestal used? Well, it's used in a subassembly 100-204, and that subassembly is used elsewhere. So it's got a long list of locations it was used in. Okay. Now, if I wanted to make a change to this particular file, you'll first notice that I do have checkout rights on this, but how would we typically change a name? I would just use a Windows slow click. What if I wanted to change it to 1, 2, 3, 4? Well, if I did this in Windows today and I tried to open up this 100-204 assembly, the software's not going to have a clue where it is. Okay, SolidWorks doesn't understand when changes are made outside of that environment. But notice if I check that file now inside of Enterprise PDM, the Enterprise PDM still kept track of the relationships. Now if I go to this 100-204 and I say, what's contained within it? Notice that file exists, and it knows that the file's not whatever the previous name was, it's now 1, 2, 3, 4. Now let's take that to another level here. What if I take this 1, 2, 3, 4 file and I decide to drag it and move it within my Enterprise PDM to a completely separate folder? Will the software have any idea? Well, if I go to my 100-204, it still knows that 1, 2, 3, 4 is a reference. If I go to the right just a little bit, it already knows that it's found in a different directory. Now the key to what I'm trying to get at here is in your level 2 quick starts and your level 1s, You're going to have the ability with the data in to move it around, reorganize it, clean it up. Okay, it makes it very easy to do those types of things now that you're in a vaulted environment. Now, that's what I had to show today. We're a few minutes short of 10 o'clock. I think we'll open it up for any questions that we have. If you want to post any questions in the questions window. I believe at this point, whoever your sales rep is will probably be contacting you very shortly. To be either asking questions about the content of the webinar and or your interest in these quick start products. John, you got anything to add?
No, I don't on my end. I think we've only had a couple questions asked, so certainly we do encourage you to either type them in now, or if you want to contact one of our offices and speak to your rep, we'd be happy to answer whatever questions you might have related to the quick starts or enterprise PDM in general, or really any other questions.
Okay, John, we got one question here. With all of the versions that are automatically saved, the data store increases exponentially. Yes, it does. There is a function of enterprise PDM called cold storage that could be initiated, which what that will do is it will take the data out of the vault. Let's say you've created 10 versions of a file, and you know you're never going to go back to version 1 through 5. You can actually remove them from the vaulted data and put them on other media, like another drive or a DVD or some other piece of media for retrieval. Or you have the choice of deleting them. And this does definitely eliminate the use of SolidWorks Explorer. There's no need to use Explorer if you're in the enterprise PDM environment. Any more questions? Are items in the vault also stored somewhere on your computer or server? That's a very interesting question, and yes, the answer is yes. In order for us to be able to eliminate the traffic from the client to the server, when I check out a file in the Enterprise Vault, it actually brings it to my local system in a folder that mimics what the server has. So when I check out something from the miter saw folder in the vault, it recreates this folder structure under my C drive. So if I were to disconnect from the server completely, I could browse to that folder and find that file on my local system. And when John talked about the benefit of speed increase, that's where you get that gain, is when you are working on files locally instead of across the network. But the key is when you check it in, that file goes back to the server, okay, and can be backed up and stored out on the server environment. Very good questions. Okay. What if you created it on the C drive of the server? If you created your local view on the C drive of the server, you're not going to gain any of the benefits of eliminating that check-in, check-out across the network, because when you check it out, it's just going to move it to the C drive of the server. But when you open it in SolidWorks, it's still going to have to go across the network to open it, and you're going to have that constant traffic.
I guess just to expand on that, the level 2 quick start folder that Kevin is using, that's really the top of the tree of where you're looking at the vault on the server. So that would be kind of what you, I guess, could think of as the root directory on the server. And you could certainly place files there if you had write permissions into that folder based on your user login, but you wouldn't really go directly to the server. Your whole interface to the server is done through this local view through Windows Explorer. Any other questions?
There's one. When you had the folder that you originally checked in, do you delete everything from that folder since it's already in the vault? Sorry, the questions weren't clear. Okay. When you check in, let me kind of take you to that. When you check in a file, I'm just going to make a copy of this to illustrate that. When I check in, I have the choice to remove the local copy. If you don't remove the local copy, yes, there will be a copy of that particular file in that folder locally. Now, there are some benefits to leaving the local copy in that when you check out, let's say, an assembly that uses that, if the software already sees that you have a local latest version, it doesn't have to retrieve that across the network. What we'll teach you as part of the training is how to handle what we call your local cache and how to clear that out and how often you can get in there and clear it. There's no repercussions to removing the local copy except that when you want another copy, you have to pull it back across the network. Okay. Well, I want to thank everyone for coming today. We'll definitely, the sales reps will be in touch, and we look forward to working with all your organizations. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.